Hey students, here we are to learn how to do checkmate with your two bishops and the king. I'm going to teach you in a way that is going to be easy for you to understand it, but also it is going to guarantee that you remember it whenever you need it in a long time down the road. This is a checkmate that you don't get that often, so people tend to forget it, but trust me, after today's lesson, that's not going to be a problem for you. So I'm going to teach you. At the end, you're going to see me demonstrate versus a chess engine, that way you see that whatever I'm teaching you works. But before we get started, let me show you what the plan is. That way you don't get anxious if you feel like you're not getting it. So you should know by now that I like to teach these basic endgames backwards. I like to teach the final part first, and this is what it is. So I'm going to teach you how to finish it. If you get this straight, then when you learn the first steps, which are really easy for this endgame, then this is going to be familiar territory. So the plan is, I'm going to teach you this part, then when I teach you the first steps, those steps are going to lead us back to this position, and that's going to be another opportunity for you to see it again. Then you're going to see me demonstrate versus an engine. And finally, you're going to learn how you could practice this at home. So trust me, you're going to get it by the end of the class. So let's get to it. The main things to keep in mind for these final positions is that the two bishops need to work together along with the king, and we need to really understand the concept of waiting moves, and you're going to see what I mean. So right now, whenever you get to this position, and you will, you need to make sure that the king gets to the corner. If we want to put him in checkmate, he needs to be on these two squares. And right now, as you can see, he's going back and forth on these two. So how do we make sure that he goes to the corner? Well, that's very easy. We just need to we need to control c8. And we can only do that with our light square bishop. So where do we go to control c8? Well, I could go to b7 or d7. b7, of course, doesn't make any sense because that's stalemate. So we need to go bishop d7. So you know when you get to this position, two bishops next to each other, and then the king on the edge next to them, you're going to start by forcing the king to go to the corner. So I'm going to do bishop d7, and now the king is forced to go to the corner. And at this point, guys, we have checkmate in 3 moves, forced. No matter what he does, this is going to be checkmate. So how do we do it? Well, now we need our other bishop to get onto this diagonal. But we have to be careful. We have to get on that diagonal when the king is on b8, because we need to do it with a check. If I do it right now, that's going to be stalemate. Also, we have to be careful because if the king happens to be here and we put him in check, then he's going to take us. So this is when we use the concept of the waiting move. I'm going to bring the bishop back. It could be to any of these squares, and that's going to allow me to, and I'm going to go all the way back. That's going to allow me to not only wait for him to get onto the dark square, but also it's going to allow me to get further away from the king. I don't want him to capture me. So now he's forced to go here, and you see I did move number 1, then move number 2, check. He's forced to go back to the corner, and then checkmate. So you can see how the two bishops and the king work together to do the checkmate. Now I'm gonna go all the way back, and we're going to do it one more time. So you could remember this, guys, like after you control this square and he goes to the corner, you could of course try to understand why we do it. Like we want to go onto this diagonal to come in with a check. But some people just remember, oh, I just have to bring the bishop all the way back for some reason, and when he comes here, check, and then checkmate. So ideally you just remember, you really understand why we do this, but you could create your mechanisms to help you remember. I'm gonna go back. Now the difficult part in this position is if it was the black pieces to move and they actually get onto c8. Remember that I wanted to control c8, that way he was forced to go to the corner, but right now I can't. So whenever I get into a situation like this in this endgame, I'm going to do a waiting move. So my bishop wants to get onto d7 to control c8, but he can't right now. Well, he's going to wait. How? By going to any of these squares, and then he moves to d7. It's very important that we do the waiting move on this diagonal because we cannot let the king escape. Again, I'm going to do my waiting move. He gets out of the way, and now I engage. And that's it. This is the same thing we had before. He goes to the corner. I do my waiting move with the bishop. He's ready to get onto this diagonal, but he needs to be smart. So I go all the way. I'm going to put it here this time. Then check, and finally checkmate. So like I said, guys, we're going to go back to this position after I teach you the first steps. So don't worry if you feel like I'm going too fast or you're not getting it. You're gonna see that it's going to make sense. Now, this is another scenario that you could get. This is another final position that might happen. We're going to go over it. It's way easier than the one before, and then I'm going to finally teach you the first steps. We have the same pattern, the two bishops next to each other, but this king happens to be on the other side, and our king is ready to help. And that's why I needed you to have a better foundation before I went over this checkmate in this course, because now you're going to understand the concept of opposition, among other things. All I need to do here is use my king to take opposition, so he cannot escape, and he has only one move, king g8. And after I take opposition one more time, I guarantee checkmate in 3 moves. So he could go to any of these 2 squares, but regardless of where he goes, we're going to do the same 3 moves, and that's going to be checkmate. So if he tries to escape by going to f8, I'm going to start working with my bishop. So they're going to take turns. Check, he's forced to go to g8, check, he's forced to go to h8, and then checkmate. This is in a way like the 2 rooks checkmate, but we're using the diagonal. Now, if we had gone to h8 instead, then we do the same move. So my bishop start taking turn, and then when he gets to g8, this is the perfect timing for my bishop to do check. So he comes onto the diagonal with a check. He's forced to go to the corner, and then checkmate. Here you have it, guys. Now we're going to go over the first steps, which you're going to see are extremely easy. I'm going to be putting them on the right, that way you can follow them and you remember them. Here you have it. So in this position, our opponent's king is in the center, so nothing to do with what we had before, so we're gonna have to do a lot of work, and you're gonna see how easy it is. And also our pieces are really passive, so how do we go from this passive position to those final positions we had before? So it's very easy. First step, we're going to make sure that we control the 4 central squares. We need to control all of them with our bishops. And how do we do that? Well, I'm going to put the dark square bishop on this long diagonal. I'm going to put my light square bishop on this long diagonal. That's it. So I'm going to start with this one. Check. He needs to move. Then the other bishop comes in. Check. And after he moves, I'm ready to get into step number 2. So step number 2 is actually placing my bishops on the center. So they need to get onto any of these 2 squares. They need to be physically on the center. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So second step, bishops get to the center. So let's say he goes here. And once this happens, guys, you're going to be creating like a cone. And I think it's easier, well, let me put it like this and then I show you. So this is going to be like a cone limiting your opponent's king. I think it's going to be easier to see if I just put, there you go. So at this point, my opponent's king has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 squares that he could go to, and before he had the whole board. This is step number 2. Step number 3 is going to be bringing my king. So at this point, my king needs to come and help, and my king is going to enter through here or through here. Basically, this king is happy to stay here back and forth, so we need our king to come in and force him to go back. So after he moves, I'm going to bring my king up. Now, it doesn't really matter if you go through here or through here. I'm just going to choose to go through this side. And notice here how when he goes to e6, I'm not able to get to f5, but now you're familiar with waiting moves. So my bishops are perfect like this. I don't want to move them, but my king could do a waiting move. I'm going to stand by here, and then I'm going to enter. And at this point, he's forced to go back. So guys, what have I done so far? Step number 1, I control the 4 central squares, not 2, not 3, all of them. Then I put my bishops on the center, and finally I brought my king. So these are the first steps. After, you're going to see how it's just repeating the same thing, and we get to the final position. We're almost there. We're about to transition from here to the final positions that you already know. But of course, there's a tricky part here, and this is what it is. So basically, we have to reposition our bishops now, and we have to move them one at a time. So bishops like to be next to each other like this, but if we want to make progress, they need to reposition to improve themselves. The question here, and what people get confused with, is which bishop do I move first? Well, I have a way to remember it, so I'm going to share it with you, but feel free to come up with your own method. So what I remember is that I'm going to move the bishop further away from my king. So this is the bishop further away from my king, so I'm going to move him one step diagonally, And then the other thing that helps me remember is that in my head, the bishops move, when they move in knight jump position from each other. So if I put him here, he's acting like a knight. So these two things help me remember every time. But this is not enough. I really want you to understand why we do it. So the reason why we do it is because if I moved this bishop instead, notice that this king could come over and attack him. So I have to make sure that they cannot attack my bishop. So when I do this, the bishop further away from my king and doing the knight jump position, anywhere he goes next, I'm going to put the bishops next to each other. So, and this is a very important rule. Not one move can pass by before I put the bishops back next to each other. So I did this. Now it's going to be their turn. So let's say they move to e8, and I'm going to repeat it. The bishops are next to each other. My king needs to get through here or through here. This is not going to change. Some people might be like, oh, look, he went back. Let me gain more space with the bishops. No. Do what I'm telling you because this works. It's not going to confuse you. So king e6 is my move. Now king d8. Time to reposition my bishops again. Which one do I move first? Well, the one further away from my king, one step diagonally, and he's doing the knight jump position from the other bishop. Check. And now here, guys, he could go to c8 or to e8. And this is going to give you the two final positions that we studied already. So this should be familiar territory. If he goes to c8, remember, not one move can pass by before I put them next to each other. So this bishop goes in. The king went from having 12 squares to 6 to only 2 right now. Now when he moves, you need to not only remember but apply common sense. If I go to d7 now, this is going to be stalemate. So I know that when my opponent's king has only 2 squares left, he's almost done. So I know something clicks in my head that I need to bring my king around to the edge. And this is going to be the position we had before. So I'm going to go there, and he's forced to go back and forth. Then finally I get to the edge and we do the checkmate that we know. So I need him to go to the corner. Then when he gets to the corner, I need to do the tempo with the bishop. That way I can do check and checkmate. So waiting move, he goes to b8, check, and finally checkmate. Now let me go back to this position where he chose to go to c8. If he had gone to e8, remember, not one move can pass by before I put them next to each other, and he's forced to go to f8. And this is the other final position I had showed you. Don't forget, the king is going to come to do opposition again, and anywhere he goes, we're going to do the checkmate in 3 moves. Check, and finally checkmate. Okay guys, so this was another opportunity for you to see it in action, but now I'm going to demonstrate versus a chess engine, and that's going to also give you an opportunity to see it one more time. So what I'm going to do, if you're not familiar with this website that I'm using, I'm leaving the link in the description, but you're gonna go here to puzzles, then drills, and under checkmates, you're going to choose the 2 bishop checkmate. And they're gonna have me do this checkmate versus a computer. Notice that this position seems really weird and we have to make it work. So I'm going to just follow the steps that we went over. And here we are. First, I know I have to control the 4 central squares by putting my bishops on these long diagonals. Now guys, some people, I've seen them that they say, oh, you know what, I'm going to put my bishop here, then I go around. No, don't get confused. It's even easier if you just put the bishop far away from the king and then you take it from there. I'm going to start by doing that. And now they're going to move. See, they went here. My first bishop is controlling the 2 central squares. Then, even better, I'm going to bring the other bishop to control these 2. By doing this, not only do I finish the first step, but I'm getting started with the second one, which is placing my bishops on the center. And I'm glad that it happened this way, because now, when I bring my last bishop, guys, notice how the cone is actually pointing to the right. It's great because that way you see it from this angle, and you really need to know how to do it from any angle. So now you know my king has to come through here, or he needs to find a way to go through here. I'm going to choose to go through here, and I bring my king. Notice how he went back. I don't mind that. I'm gonna go here. I know my king needs to go here. This is a recipe that never fails. Okay, so he moved here. Now, you know that you're supposed, once I get here, I get to this position, I'm supposed to reposition my bishop. And the bishop that I'm supposed to move is the one further away from the king, and he needs to go one step diagonally doing the knight jump position. But I can't. So I'm going to do the waiting move. And my king is going to do that. So I'm going to go here. Now he moved, and I get the opportunity to reposition my bishops. Bishop further away from my king, one step, doing the knight jump position from the other bishop. Then not one move can pass by before I put them next to each other. Now my king needs to go in here, but I can't, so I stand by. Then I get in, and I reposition my bishops, the one further away from the king. They get next to each other, and now you should know how to finish this. The king has 2 squares to go to. I know that I need to go around to the edge. So there we go. And don't forget, guys, if I go here and here, that's going to be stalemate. So I need to go to be next to the bishops on the edge. There we go. And this is perfect because now you can see me doing the difficult part, which is where I have to do a tempo to get here. Remember, I need the king to go to the corner. So I cannot go here right now. I do a tempo. Now I get in. Then my bishop needs to, remember, he needs to get into this diagonal, but I need to come in with a check. So I do my tempo, then check, and finally I'm going to do checkmate, and that's it. So guys, this is it. Feel free to come here and practice on your own. If you have someone at home, practice with that person, because that's all it takes. And if you have some time in a week, 2 weeks, then try one more time to make sure that you have not forgotten it. So with that said, feel free to leave me any comments or questions, and I'll be more than happy to reply to them. I'll see you guys next class.